What does it cost to save a life? Not in money, not in medicine, in years, in hunger, in the kind of sacrifice that doesn't make the news because the person making it is too small for anyone to notice. This is the story of a woman who paid that price, and a boy who spent 20 years not knowing. The baby was found on a Tuesday, or maybe a Wednesday. Mama Eziaku was never sure about days. Days blurred together when you lived under the Ojuelegba overpass, where time was measured not by clocks, but by the rhythm of traffic overhead and the angle of sunlight through the concrete gaps. She was 61 that year, or 62. Birth certificates were luxuries her generation hadn't been offered. She was thin, not slender, thin. The kind of thin that comes from years of eating last, eating least, eating whatever was left after everyone else had taken what they needed. She had been collecting recyclables, plastic bottles, aluminum cans, scraps of copper wire, stuffing them into a woven raffia bag that was older than some of the buildings around her. The overpass at night was a different country from the overpass by day. Darker, quieter, populated by shadows that moved and shadows that didn't, and you learned quickly not to confuse the two. The sound came from the dumpster behind the pharmacy. Not a cry, not yet. A whimper. Thin, high, barely there. The sound of something alive that was in the process of deciding whether to stay that way. Mama Eziaku stopped. Her hands tightened on the raffia bag. Her body, old, tired, battered by 6 decades of a life that had never once been easy, went completely still. She approached the dumpster, slowly. Her fingers found the edge. She lifted the flap. A baby. Newborn. Hours old, maybe less. Wrapped in a hospital blanket, white with blue stripes, the kind they used at the private maternity ward on the next street. The umbilical cord was still clamped. The skin was wrinkled, reddish, new. The eyes were closed. The mouth was open. The whimper came again, weaker this time. Mama Eziaku's hands, cracked, scarred, trembling, reached in. She lifted the child, pressed him against her chest. His skin was cold, too cold. She opened her wrapper, the outermost layer, the warmest thing she owned, and wrapped him inside it, against her body, skin to skin. Her heartbeat against his, her warmth flowing into his cold. He stopped whimpering. His tiny fist closed around the fabric of her dress, and in a dumpster behind a pharmacy in one of the richest cities in Africa, a homeless woman became a mother for the second time in her life. She named him Chukwudi. God exists. Because if God didn't exist, she told herself, then this child ending up in her hands, not in the gutter, not in the river, not undiscovered until morning, was a coincidence too cruel to accept. She fed him on powdered milk bought with bottled deposit money. She boiled water on a kerosene burner she borrowed from a woman who slept 3 pillars down. She washed his clothes, tiny things donated from a church bin, in a basin of soapy water every night. The other homeless people watched. Some helped. Most didn't. A few told her she was foolish, an old woman with nothing taking on a mouth she couldn't feed. "Give him to the orphanage," one man said. "They'll take care of him." "Orphanages take care of numbers," Mama Eziaku replied. "Not children." She kept him. The first year was the hardest. Not because of the baby. Chukwudi was calm, watchful, patient beyond his age, as if he understood from birth that noise was a luxury. The hardest part was the milk. Formula cost more than she earned in 3 days of collecting recyclables. She walked farther, collected more, slept less, ate almost nothing. Her body paid. Her knees swelled. Her back curved. Her cough, the one that had started as a tickle 2 years ago, deepened into something that rattled her chest like stones in a tin. But the boy grew, pound by pound, smile by smile. His first word was, "Ma." Not mama, just ma, short and absolute. The way he said everything, even later, even when he became someone else entirely. When Chukwudi was 3, Mama Iziaku burned her hand. The kerosene burner tipped while she was heating his milk. The fuel caught fire. She reached through the flame to grab the pot, the milk, the only milk she had, and pulled it out. The burn was severe, 3rd degree. Her right hand, from the knuckles to the wrist, blistered and scarred. She treated it with aloe she stole from someone's garden and cloth she tore from her own dress. She never told anyone how much it hurt. The boy drank his milk. That was enough. When he was 5, the orphanage came. Social workers, clipboards, the language of concern that always preceded the act of taking. "Ma'am, the child needs proper care, schooling, nutrition. You cannot provide." "I have provided for 5 years. You live under a bridge." "He is alive. He is healthy. He is loved." "Ma'am, his name is Chukwudi, not the child. Chukwudi." They took him. Not violently. Paperwork doesn't need violence. It has forms and signatures and clauses and the quiet bureaucratic cruelty of systems designed by people who never slept under overpasses. Mama Iziaku stood on the sidewalk and watched the car drive away. Chukwudi's face pressed against the back window, his palm flat on the glass, his mouth forming a word she couldn't hear but knew by heart. Ma. She didn't chase the car. Her legs wouldn't have allowed it. She stood until the car disappeared. Then she picked up her raffia bag and walked back to the overpass. That night, for the first time in 5 years, the space beside her was empty. She placed her hand, the scarred one, on the concrete where he used to sleep. Cold. She kept the wrapper, the one she had wrapped him in that first night, folded it carefully and placed it inside the raffia bag. She carried it every day, every single day, for 20 years. Chukwudi Okafor. That was the name the orphanage gave him. Then the adoptive parents gave him another, Chukwudi Mensa Okafor, hyphenated, polished, engineered for success. The Mensas were wealthy. Not Mama Eziaku's idea of wealthy, their idea. Private schools, international universities, a house in Ikoyi with a swimming pool and a gate that required a code. They gave the boy everything money could buy and told him a story about his past that was almost entirely fiction. "Your birth mother was a young woman who couldn't care for you," they said. "She left you at a hospital. We adopted you through an agency." Clean, simple, painless. A story designed to prevent questions. It worked. For 20 years, it worked. Chukwudi grew into the kind of man his adoptive parents had engineered. Cambridge educated, sharp, ambitious. By 30, he had built a tech company valued at 40 billion naira. His face appeared on panels, podcasts, magazine covers. He was the African success story that the world loved to celebrate. But something gnawed at him. A gap. Not in his life. His life was full. In his memory. A sensation more than a story. The smell of kerosene. The texture of rough fabric. The sound of a heartbeat that wasn't his own, pressed against his ear in a rhythm he couldn't name, but couldn't forget. And a hand. A scarred hand, reaching through something bright and hot, pulling something small toward safety. He told his therapist. She said it could be a birth memory, fragmented, symbolic, unreliable. He told his adoptive mother. She changed the subject. He told no one else. But the hand stayed, burned into his mind the way the fire had burned into her skin. The search began quietly. A private investigator, hospital records, orphanage files, most of them incomplete, water-damaged, filed by people who had since retired or died. It took 8 months. 8 months of dead ends, wrong names, sealed records, and the particular Nigerian bureaucracy that treats information as currency and withholds it accordingly. Then, a file. Yellowed, typed on a manual typewriter, dated 25 years ago. Child recovered from informal care. Caretaker. Unnamed elderly woman residing under the Ojuelegba overpass. Child approximately 5 years old, in good health, no signs of abuse or neglect. In good health, no signs of neglect. A homeless woman had kept a baby alive and healthy under a bridge for 5 years, and the report noted it with the same clinical detachment as a temperature reading. Chukwudi read the file 3 times. His hands were shaking. His chest was tight. The scarred hand in his memory was burning brighter now. Not a dream, not a symbol, a truth. He went to Ojuelegba, not with his driver, not in his Range Rover. He took a taxi. He wore jeans and a plain shirt. He walked under the overpass for the first time in 20 years and felt the ground hum with a recognition his conscious mind couldn't process, but his body understood. The overpass had changed. New construction, new barriers. The homeless population had been pushed further, always further, into the cracks the city didn't want to see. He asked. Market women, street vendors, the old men who sat on upturned crates and remembered everything because no one else bothered to. Mama Ezyaku, the one who found the baby? Nods. The nods of people who protected their own. She's still alive? She's alive. A woman selling oranges pointed south. Under the old railway bridge. She doesn't move much anymore. He walked. 20 minutes. The air grew heavier. The city grew quieter. Then he saw it. A small shelter, plastic sheeting stretched between 2 concrete pillars, a mat on the ground, a kerosene burner, a raffia bag, ancient, patched with tape and thread, leaning against the wall like a companion. And sitting on a low stool, her back curved, her hands in her lap, one smooth, one scarred, an old woman who looked as if the wind could take her and the earth could just as easily refuse to let go. Mama Ezyaku. She didn't look up when he approached. Her eyes were cloudy, cataracts, years of smoke and sun and tears, but not blind. Not yet. He stood 3 feet away, his throat closed, his vision blurred. She looked up, studied him with the unhurried patience of someone who had been studying the world from below for decades. A stranger, tall, well-dressed, even in plain clothes, wealth had a posture, a stillness that couldn't be disguised.
"Can I help you?"
she asked. Her voice was smaller than he expected, but steady, still steady. He opened his mouth. Nothing came. She tilted her head, waited. The way she had always waited, for bottles to collect, for milk to heat, for a boy to say his first word. "Ma," he said. One syllable, the first word he had ever spoken. Unchanged, unbroken. 20 years old and still carrying the same weight it had carried when a toddler said it under an overpass with his fist wrapped in her dress. Her hands stopped. Her cloudy eyes sharpened, not with sight, but with something deeper. Recognition that bypassed the eyes entirely and went straight to the body, to the bones, to the place where memory lives when the mind can no longer hold it.
"Chukwudi?"
He couldn't speak. He knelt. The concrete was rough under his knees. He took her hand, the scarred one, the one that had reached through fire to save his milk, the one that had lived in his memory for 20 years, and pressed it against his cheek. Her fingers trembled, then steadied, then moved across his face the way they had moved across his face when he was a baby, reading him by touch, recognizing him the way only a mother could.
"My boy,"
she breathed.
"My Chukwudi."
He broke, completely. The billionaire, the Cambridge graduate, the magazine cover, all of it dissolved. And what remained was a boy who had been pulled from a dumpster by a woman who had nothing and given everything.
"I found you,"
he said through tears.
"I'm sorry it took so long." "You're here now,"
her voice cracked.
"That's all that matters."
He didn't leave. He sat on the concrete beside her stool, her scarred hand still in his, and listened. She told him everything. The dumpster, the milk, the burn, the night they took him away and the wrapper she still carried. She reached into the raffia bag, slowly, arthritically, and pulled it out. Faded, stained, folded with a precision that spoke of ritual. She had folded it the same way every day for 20 years. He unfolded it. A hospital blanket, white with blue stripes, small enough for a newborn, worn soft as silk from 2 decades of being held.
"You kept this," he whispered. "It smelled like you, for a long time."
She paused.
"It doesn't anymore, but I remember."
He pressed the blanket against his face, and the smell, absent, vanished, gone, somehow reached him anyway. Through memory, through love, through the kind of connection that time could damage but never destroy. The weeks that followed were not a fairy tale. They were complicated. Paperwork, medical evaluations. The Mensas, confronted with the truth they had buried, reacted with the awkward shame of people who had chosen comfort over honesty and now had to face the receipt.
"We did what we thought was best," his adoptive mother said. "You were right," Chukwudi replied. His voice was gentle but firm. "But so was she, and she deserved to be found." Mama Iziaku was moved, not into a mansion, not into a penthouse. She refused those. "Too much space," she said. "I don't know what to do with space." Instead, Chukwudi found a small house near the market. 1 story, warm walls, a garden with a mango tree, a kitchen where the kerosene burner was replaced by a proper stove, but she kept the old one on a shelf, because some things aren't meant to be forgotten. A carer visited daily. A doctor came weekly. Her cataracts were operated on, the first surgery she had ever had.
When the bandages came off and she saw Chukwudi's face clearly for the first time, she studied him for a long, silent moment. "You look like trouble," she said. He laughed so hard the nurses came running. He visited every Sunday, without fail, without excuse, without his phone. He sat in her kitchen and she cooked, slowly now, her hands trembling over the pot, but refusing help the way she had always refused help. He ate what she made. He told her about his week. She told him about the market gossip. "The orange woman overcharged me again," she reported. "How much?" 50 naira. "Mama, you're worth 40 billion naira now. 50 naira is 50 naira. Her eyes sharpened. "Don't you start." The ceremony was not a wedding. It was something rarer. On a Sunday afternoon, in the small garden behind Mama Iziaku's house, Chukwudi gathered the people who mattered. Not executives, not investors. The orange seller from the market. The woman who used to sleep 3 pillars down at the overpass. 2 nuns from the church that had donated baby clothes 25 years ago. Mama Joy, not the same Mama Joy, but every community had one. The woman who had helped when no one else would. And the Mensas, who came because Chukwudi asked, who sat in the back row because they understood, finally, quietly, that love was not a competition. There was no officiant, no rings, no vows. Just Chukwudi, standing before a woman sitting in a plastic chair under a mango tree, holding a framed certificate. He read it aloud. "This document certifies that Mama Iziaku, legal name pending because the system that failed her once will not define her now, is hereby recognized as the mother of Chukwudi Mensa Okafor. Not by law, not by blood, but by the only thing that ever mattered." He paused. His voice shook. "By choice, by sacrifice, by the decision to reach into a dumpster and choose love when the world offered nothing." He knelt beside her chair, placed the frame in her scarred hands. She looked at it, then at him. Her eyes, clear now, surgically restored, filled. "I already knew I was your mother," she said. "I didn't need paper for that." "I know." He covered her hands with his. "But the world does." She looked at the certificate again, then at the gathered faces, then at the mango tree which was dropping fruit lazily, unconcerned with human emotion. She laughed, a sound that came from somewhere deep and old and undefeated. "Well," she said, "read it again, louder, so the orange woman hears." The garden erupted. That evening, after the food was eaten and the guests had gone, and the sky had turned the specific shade of purple that Lagos reserved for its most honest moments, Chukwudi sat beside Mama Iziaku on the garden bench. She held the old blanket in her lap. He held her scarred hand. Neither of them spoke. Because some things, 20 years of absence, a dumpster in the dark, a hand reaching through fire, a word pressed against glass, are too large for language. They simply sat, together, finally. And the mango tree dropped one more fruit, softly, like a period at the end of a sentence that had taken 25 years to finish. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to this channel and tell us where you are watching from. Have a wonderful day.